Welcome, everyone, to I Got Next. My name is Chad. You see Jonesy, you see Ant, and you see our man Adam. This show is the newest show that we have from the Jean-Core team. We're going to be bringing you sports takes different from what you see in most places. Jonesy, what do the people have to expect from this project?
Well, what we're going to try to bring to the table is sports on a cultural level. We want to talk about how the sports that we watch and consume affect us out in our society. You know, we're not going to really break down to a fine page stats and numbers, and then you get some of that, but mostly we're talking about how sports affects us in society at large.
Mm-hmm. And you're the active athlete among the group of us doing the basketball thing. What do you expect to get out of this?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to, like Jonesy just said, unique conversations about outside looking in and how a lot of decisions from, the cultural standpoint, the business standpoint, more of that, more than the X's and O's. And I'm sure it's going to be natural that we're going to get into that type of stuff. But, talking about the business side of sports, that's actually my background, what I went to school for. And, just like getting into stuff like today's topic.
Yeah. And Adam, you have a kind of a similar background, and you came to the team as a writer, and a lot of your stuff is dealt with sports. And you have your own blog, you have your own show. What do you expect to bring to this, and what do you expect to get out of it?
Yeah, so going along with what they said already, my show is kind of the X's and O's, like the kind of stuff that we're going to more so avoid. So I think it'll be cool to add another element to like what I'm discussing this type of stuff. Just like Ant, I was a sport management major when I first went to school, and it ended up being a minor for me. But so I have the same kind of background with like the sports business stuff, obviously like the sports culture. In America, sports is the culture to an extent, you know what I mean? So I think it's really important to talk about, topics like this more so than just like who did the best last night or whatever the case is. Right.
So let's get right into this week's topic. We're going to be talking about, we have had a slew of just some bizarre people I never would have expected to see in a boxing ring, celebrity boxing matches. And Jonesy, as the, a guy who is deep into the boxing game, I think this topic is right up your alley. Are these celebrity boxing matches good for the sport of boxing? Are they ruining the sport of boxing? Or are they maybe the only hope that the sport of boxing has left?
I would say all of the above. What happens when you have what I saw last night, man? I saw Lamar Odom, a great NBA player, man. Like, people try to talk about the Kardashian thing. He was a great player. Great player. I'm not saying he's Michael Jordan, but he's a great player. In the ring with a kid who was on the Mickey Mouse Club. And they look like a crackhead beating up his trailer trash girlfriend. It was horrible. Horrible. If you came from Mars and landed on Earth and that was your first impression of what boxing was, you would get back on your spaceship and fly the fuck back to wherever you came from.
It's like a praying mantis beating up on an ant.
Man, it was bad, man. It was really, really bad, man. And I hope to never see that again. And somehow, some way, Chuck Liddell was the referee. I don't know what the fuck was going on. But yeah, is it bad for the sport? Absolutely, because it delegitimizes actual fights. But does it keep it in the public's mind space? So yeah, so that makes it a good thing. But the problem is the line of demarcation between Canelo Alvarez getting in the ring with one of the Charlos, or us having fucking, Screech, recipe Screech fight Horshack. Like when we had that shit. This is bad for the sport. And I think that what people don't realize is that, yeah, okay, Floyd's getting the bag. It's great. It puts eyes on the sport. There's only one Floyd Mayweather. People don't realize that when you talk about the highest grossing fights in the history of boxing, Floyd Mayweather is responsible out of the top 10 for probably 6 of them. The top grossing fight pay-per-view wise and buys wise ever is Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. The second one was one of those exhibitions, but it was more legitimate. It was Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. That was number 2. Floyd brought in $410 million with the Pacquiao fight, brought in $400 million with the Conor McGregor fight. The third biggest fight ever was Floyd and the previous biggest draw in boxing, Oscar De La Hoya. That was $136 million. The fourth biggest fight ever, Canelo Alvarez, Floyd Mayweather, 150. Then the number 5 is Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, 2. Number 6 is Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. Number 7 is Tyson versus Evander Holyfield, 1. Number 8 is Tyson versus Peter McNeely. Peace to him. Right? Number 9 is Floyd Mayweather versus Miguel Cotto. And number 10 is Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez, Part 3, 88 million. So look at that. What was that? Floyd had 6 of the top most. So when Floyd Mayweather leaves the sport of boxing, the money is leaving with him. And what you can't have is the highest grossing fight of the year being Floyd Mayweather versus a novice. You can't have that. So what we got to ask ourselves is where's the next draw in boxing coming from?
Right.
That's the problem. The future of boxing is on the line.
Yeah, because for all the criticism of the Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather fight, what was it? I think Floyd brought in like 133 million for himself, and then Paul took home like 18 million. It's insane the amount of money that they're bringing in. You can't deny the numbers, right, Ant?
Listen, Floyd, if you want to whoop my ass for $18 million, bro, I'm game.
Yeah, I think it's good for the sport, and this is why. Just from my background of schooling, I was always taught to look at things at the business side of it. At the end of the day, this is the entertainment industry, whether it's boxing, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, whatever sport you want to talk about, it's about entertainment. And these fights have been entertaining. I don't think anybody can deny that. They have been entertaining. And as you just mentioned, $133 million. I think, Floyd is one of the best finesses out there. He just laughs when people are like, oh, Floyd, we want you in another fight. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to say no until they hit my asking price.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I agree with Jonesy as far as the legitimacy of the sport. Yes, that is definitely in jeopardy because to be honest, I can only name a few boxers. Like, it's not, I can name a few hockey players. I can name a lot of basketball players, a lot of football players, a lot of hockey players, a lot of baseball players. When it comes to boxing, I can only name a few.
Wow.
And yeah, that's my point. It's like the popularity behind it isn't, it's not like how it used to be maybe like 30 years ago. So I think they have to find a new way to rejuvenate that and get some of these more popular fights more noticeable. So in my opinion, they should put some of these popular fights and intertwine them with these celebrity fights just to get these names out there. Because if you have Floyd fighting Logan Paul and then all of a sudden you have Tyson Fury out there in the next fight and that's the main card, then maybe people actually get hooked on it and then move forward. Like, oh, that was actually pretty cool. I'm going to watch the next one.
Yeah, it was similar to like how some of these like minor league cities that have hockey teams and stuff like that, the fans come for the fights in the hockey games, and then they start to learn what offsides is, when they had 2 line passes and what all that stuff is. Well, Adam, what's your take on it as we get close to wrapping up here?
Yeah, so we actually got into this on my weekly show, Russo's Playbook. I was actually taking
shameless plug.
Yeah, I was taking the stance of Ant's side, but my boys were taking Jonesy's side, kind of with his points. But they're actual like boxing fans, UFC fans. They like the sport itself. I've never been like a huge fan. Like I'll watch like the Floyd Pacquiao fight. I'll watch clips on Twitter and stuff, but I'm never like following it. Like, oh, this fight is this week. So I'm looking at it from a business. I'm like, oh, this is good because I didn't know any of the up and coming boxers. You know what I mean? So this is bringing people like me into the sport a little bit. Obviously, Floyd is the name. You'll watch that. Manny Pacquiao is the name, but I don't even know who's like up and coming right now to make a difference for boxing. And with the UFC taking over right now, I think that it's kind of like low key saving boxing in a way. But I understand why it hurts it because you're not watching the performance that a real boxing fan wants to see.
See, the difference between everybody says that the UFC is overtaking boxing. It's not really overtaking boxing because none of those guys in the UFC, the biggest check that Conor McGregor ever got in his life was fighting Floyd Mayweather. None of those guys will touch the lowest pay-per-view boxing fight going around. And boxing at its height, at its pinnacle, when you have a great fight, and it doesn't even have to be a heavyweight fight, when you have 2 great fighters that are in the public's mind space, that is the biggest event of the sporting year besides the Super Bowl, bar none. So boxing still has a place, but good boxing is not out there.
Yeah.
It's out there, but if you're a guy who watches the sport, there are a lot of great young fighters, but there's this kind of serendipity that happens when you have a guy like a Muhammad Ali, which we'll never get another one of them kind of guys, or you get a guy like a Sugar Ray Leonard, and you have a marvelous Marvin Hagler and a Roberto Duran and the Thomas Hitman Hearns all at the same time. They're all under the same promoter, Bob Arum, and they all fight each other. The problem with boxing is that the best don't fight the best. The problem with UFC is that the best fight the best too fast. So you don't get a chance to develop a rivalry. So by the time that rivalry is being developed, the one guy gets beaten, everybody gets over it already. There has to be a line of like not a line of demarcation, but they have to come to a happy medium in boxing to where, one, you get some of the governing bodies out of boxing. It's too much. You can have 4 guys running around at one time, even 5, 6 guys running around at one time calling themselves
saying they're the heavyweight champ. Yeah.
Or I'm the welterweight. I'm the welterweight champ. I'm the welterweight. It doesn't mean shit.
Right.
Back in the day, there was one heavyweight belt, the lineal belt. You know what I mean? There was one welterweight champion, and you had to fight that guy, and you couldn't avoid that if that's what you wanted to be, and that's how you got the money. So that's one problem with it. 2, UFC is on every other fucking week because these guys don't have any control over their career. Dana White says, yo, we're making this fight and that fight, and you're going to fight next week, and that's it. And if you don't want to, then we're going to push you to the side, and that's it. And that's the problem. It's only one show in town. So, you know, what I will say about all of this, the whole, it's bringing money to the sport. All money isn't good money because you're not leaving a future for the sport. When Floyd Mayweather is no longer able to go between them ropes, because eventually it's going to get to a point where he's going to be so old, people are not going to want to see it. He's never going to take anybody who's going to actually beat him, right? So when he gets through them ropes and he's, you know, who's he going to fight next? You going to get in there and fight Little Bow Wow next? Like, nobody wants to see that shit, bro. It's getting to the point where, you're running out of that grift, right? Yeah. So now what's next? Definitely. We're going to have a 58-year-old Mike Tyson fight Evander Holyfield in November, I heard. He's not 58, but I'm being an asshole. I'm just saying. So now you got all these great young fighters, the Gervonta Davises of the world, the Ryan Garcias of the world. He's not a great fighter, but he's very, charismatic as shit, good-looking kid.
He's popular. Popular.
Shakur Stevenson, great young fighter.
Jersey.
Yes, and he's from Newark. He's from the hometown, right? Yo, listen, you got Terrence Crawford. You got all of these guys. What needs to happen in boxing is championship fights need to happen on national television again. If championship fights happen on national television for free and they get the promoters and a lot of people trying to shy away from violence, because I understand we're in a violent society. Like, give me a fucking break. What needs to happen is the Terrence Crawfords of the world need to fight on national television and become national icons. And that's how you could save the sport. Yeah,
I agree with that. That wasn't happening though, so I'm looking at it like, all right, this might be a good idea, you know.
Yeah.
But
everything you said is exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Nobody is even close to making it happen.
Right. And to the point of the side that says this maybe is saving the sport of boxing is that if this forces their hand, similar to like what you've seen with like college football, is they're already talking about now they're going to expand their playoff system to 12 teams now, possibly. And I mean, I've been talking about this since the 90s that they needed to have at least an 8, if not a 16 team playoff to get into the real game, because you can still make a shit ton of money off of that stuff. It was always about, well, the money's not there. The bowl teams want to have their bowl. Like, man, you could still run that shit through the bowls. All the people who are making money off of boxing, they're being given a blueprint for like, hey, look, here's how you can promote this stuff and how you can make this stuff relevant again. And so learn from what UFC and what these celebrity matches are, and make a hybrid, what they're doing, and make a hybrid that sort of like builds towards what you're talking about, where you actually get to see this, and then you maybe you create that little window of where they could bring it back to relevance again.
I wonder whether they are allowed to have a non-sanctioned fight on a card with sanctioned governing body fights. I don't know that to be for sure. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm sure there's all these, you got to deal with all the advertisement deals and TV deals. There's so much, like you're about to say, I rudely interrupt you, but there's so much behind it that people don't even realize. Like the average person, they don't even realize, like, why can't he do this? It's like, oh, because he has a deal with Powerade and he has a deal with Gatorade. so they can't fight each other.
Right. It's like the Marvel.
Sometimes it's like that.
Yeah, like the Marvel and Fox, the 20th Century Fox thing with the X-Men and the Avengers and all that stuff.
That's why there's 3 different Spider-Man series.
Right, exactly.
But see, it's not even from that prism. It's like Evander Holyfield, he didn't want to retire. He was fighting way past his prime because he's one of these religious guys who gets married and thinks he has to marry every chick that he fucks. So he has like 30 kids, right? And he has all these divorces and he lost a lot of his money. And like that house that you see in everybody's movies, all these Tyler Perry movies, that mansion, Rick Ross owns that mansion. He bought Evander Holyfield's old estate in Atlanta.
Wow.
Yo, Evander Holyfield used to own half of Atlanta and he's broke now. So not broke, but he's not where he was and where he should be, right? Yeah. Evander was still trying to fight and he couldn't get a license to fight. And he could only get a license to fight in like bullshit states like Indiana and stuff. No disrespect to Indiana out there. I'm sorry, everybody. Shout out to Indiana. Shout out to Indiana, right? But on the real, like, so the thing is, you have governing bodies and they might not sanction people who can't medically pass the state licensing tests to get in there and get in the ring. You know what I'm saying? Like you couldn't have a Tyson and Holyfield on the undercard of a Gervonta Davis fight. I don't think you can. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know. I have to look in it. I have to do some more research in that, but I don't know if that's a possibility. Because if it isn't, and say for instance, we remove that obstacle out of the way, this is totally the way to go. Because you bring the hype, you bring the casual fan into the event. That's what the Super Bowl does. The Super Bowl brings entertainment. They bring all of the commercials. You have people haven't watched one down of football all year, but will watch the whole Super Bowl. And that's the part of boxing that you need to make everything an event. And you could save the sport, you know.
Well, like you just said, how you need to make it an event. A lot of people don't know that year that the 76ers, they had the worst record in NBA history.
Oh,
Trust the process. When they were 10-72, the trust the process year, they had they had the best ticket sales in the entire league.
Really? I never knew that.
Because they made every game an entertainment thing. They were giving out, they were one of the first people, like they were starting the t-shirts, they were starting all these in-between events during the quarters. They had the best ticket sales of that season.
Like one of those minor league teams that
that's what they did.
Does all corporate
minor league
bro.
T-shirts.
I feel like they were forced to get creative, and they
there you go.
What they had the owner singing "Love Me Sexy."
So, if you liked what we had to show you here, you are going to love what we've got coming with I Got Next. Tune in, like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to comment. Give us your take. We want to hear what you have to say about this because we're going to keep bringing topics like this, and we're going to address them in the way that we did here today. This is what we've got coming with the Joncourt Sports team. I Got Next. You see Jonesy, you see Ant, you see Adam. I'm Chad, and with that, we're going to sign off. Peace, everybody.